In this video, I want to cover some history and try and help the members understand what we're facing isn't new. This is a normal part of bargaining, unfortunately. And in this case, this particular round of bargaining, I've previously talked about competitive and collaborative bargaining and hopes that we would get to a collaborative state, but still remains very competitive. Unfortunately, the company's position continues to be that they can't afford to do many things based on cost and using comparisons of who they want, where they want, when they want, and not really listening to rational ideas that are outside the box. You know, history has a way of repeating itself, and one of the greatest things that we have to pay attention to is how to not repeat history. If you do some research, you'll find that in 1985, United's pilots fought through a similar scenario like this, and it had to do more with B-scale wages, but in this particular case, the outsourcing story we're talking about, or where the expansion of outsourcing is looked to be going by the company, is just something that's completely unacceptable and has to be unacceptable for the membership in totality, and we need to unify on that subject. I've heard some people talk about not understanding the dynamics of the outsourcing and why does it matter what happens in the base world, or why does it matter with what they're talking about, this 15%? Don't we have that today? The reality of it is this is the proposal as written by the company is certainly something that creates massive amounts of job loss for the future, not just in the base, but in line, not just in line, but in Title II, GSE, automotive. And again, if you really weed through what they're saying, it's everybody will have a job, provided you don't mind moving to where that job's going to be, where the company feels the need. And again, they'll talk about stations, protection, and things of that nature. We've all who've been around have seen this and have found that every time this is just a hollow promise of what reality is. And in this particular case, we must fight collectively, fight as one. And I hate to use the word fight, but again, this is a competitive negotiation. Collaborative negotiation would be different. But we're in the fight for survival, for our futures, and when people say, well, we don't need to worry about the people behind us, I'm not necessarily worried about the people behind us. I am worried about the people currently on the property. And when I say on the property, where you work today is more than likely where you want to work into the future. And the job security pieces that we talk about, at least on our side of the table, are people living where they currently live, not where the company wants them to live. Understandably, we can't control every piece of the business, so to speak, forward-looking, but to say that people that live in certain areas want to live someplace else as a result of the company's business decisions, not the fact that they need to move, but through outsourcing their work in the future, is just tantamount to what unions stand for. And when I say unions, remember, the membership is the union. It's not just the leadership or the negotiating committee or the folks speaking on members' behalf. It's all of us collectively fighting for a common good. And that common good is fairly simple. We want the best wages in the industry, we want the best work rules in the industry, and we want the best benefits in the industry. Those three core components are what this contract's ultimately about. And just a little bit back on history, you know, one of the people that talked about building a facility in Brazil, ironically, was Frank Lorenzo. And for those who remember the era of Frank Lorenzo, he was an evil person, destroyed great airline, Eastern Airline, through a fight with his unions. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if this is Doug Parker's idea of a fight he wants to take on, or Robert Isom's fight, or whomever's fight, but this issue on Brazil is paramount. We are talking about hundreds to thousands of jobs, and I would say thousands in the future, being in Brazil, a country run by a coup government with really no oversight by the FAA, and we want that to be for American Airlines passengers. What Americans ultimately asking us to do is shift the paradigm of maintenance outside of the U.S. to South America, so their competitors have to follow that suit. And in thinking about it, what I said earlier, I may have misspoke about an original idea. They may have an original idea copied off of Frank Lorenzo's early idea, and that is to build their maintenance bases outside the U.S. and use us as a method to pay for other costs for the company. And it's just something that we can't engage in. We have got to get back to the bargaining table and find a solution. I absolutely agree with that. But it cannot be on the backs of our members, our current members specifically, those members that have 10, 15, 20 years left to work here. Most of us are getting to the age where we can start to look at what might happen on the horizon for retirement, but there's still a fair amount of us that have a long way to go to get to retirement. And last, I'll end with this. The early out conversation, the company can offer that package today to anybody they want to, and they certainly should. If they feel that they can afford to pay $105,000 to a mechanic to leave right now, or $65,000, I believe, to a stores clerk, or whatever it was, so to speak, for facilities, because they didn't really say what that amount was for facilities and automotive, then they should do that, because it should never be tied to a contract. The reason they want to tie it to the contract is for us to tie it up in a pretty little bow and say, it's okay to outsource that work. And that is just simply not the case. Thank you.